Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Missouri Instructional Leaders Network, where we bring together instructional leaders to share experiences, grow professional relationships, and build curriculum and instruction skills. My name is Valerie Montgomery, and today our special guest is Dr. Sarah Marriott. And Dr. Marriott has led a remarkable career in K-12 education in Missouri. She is currently the superintendent of Boonville School District and was recently named the Liberty Public Schools Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. This morning, Dr. Marriott's going to be sharing her insights on a topic that she is really passionate about, and that is the importance of encouraging women to take professional risks and to reach for those historically out of reach positions. Dr. Marriott, thank you so much for being here this morning, and I'm going to let you take the wheel.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate the opportunity to share with this group and share my insights. And as you said, my passion, it is something that I'm very passionate about and enjoy talking about and sharing with others. So what I hope is that this group of leaders will at least take a piece from it and my presentation in which they can take back and use currently or use in the future. So I'll just dig right in. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, all right. So I'm going to talk today about mentoring and intentional mentoring of female leaders specifically. And I love sharing this reference with our C&I people, our curriculum instruction people, our data people. I share all the time, hope, think, and feel aren't strategies. And I think that this applies to mentoring and encouraging women as well. We have to do more than hope, think, and feel our way to encouraging more women to be in leadership and to step up and to engage in a leadership process. And so that's what I just want to share today with you guys. Let's see if I can. Oops, went too far. So I love this. This was shared with me a while back that we believe that like a girl is a compliment. And I have someone gave me a button with that, and I keep it on my desk and I reference it all the time because how often do we hear like a girl in a negative sense? You know, we throw like a girl, we do whatever it is like a girl. And for some reason that association has a negative connotation with it. And we need to really think like a girl is a compliment. And that is something that we really want to embrace and shine with. And so I try and I share this often as I can with our high school girls, you know, whenever I have an opportunity to meet with them and chat with them, is that, you know, this is something we fully believe in, that like a girl is a compliment. And so moving forward with this today, I wanted to share with you kind of a sense of some background as to why this is important in encouraging women in leadership and girls in leadership, because it doesn't just start when we're adults. This notion and thinking about leadership and being a leader starts very, very early on with our kids, with our students, and specifically girls. And so I wanted to share this information from an organization called ROCKS, and it's Ruling Our Experiences. And Lisa Hinkleman is the founder of this group. And so I just took this information from her. This is totally their work, but they do something called the Girls Index, in which they survey girls in middle school and high school about a variety of things. And they've gathered all this information. And so their most recent Girls Index is, you know, comprised of over 10,000 surveys of girls. And what they found are these pieces that I'm going to share with you now, is that when we look at girls' confidence on that first box, it declines sharply when they hit high school. And one of the most important pieces of that is that girls' confidence doesn't start to rise back up again until they're in their 40s. And so we have this very long trajectory of time in which girls do not feel confidence in their skills about themselves, about whoever they are, and that stays with them through some very formative years. And it stays with them during a time in which they're making career choices. They're thinking about what they want to do with their life. They're thinking about the direction that they head. And so when we reflect back, that may or may not have been you when you were a young person, a teenager, or in your early 20s, but the majority of girls really feel this sense of lack of confidence. And so we think about that from the perspective of how does that influence their future decision making? I share that because I really think it is a very significant contributing factor as to why we don't see more females in leadership, specifically in education, but generally in leadership as a whole, because this isn't just a piece that just suddenly develops when we have careers. This is a very long, ingrained sense of patterns that develop and way of thinking that our girls develop. On that middle one, it says 1 in 2 girls are afraid to speak their mind because they want others to like them. They want to be liked. And so when we think about that prior slide about like a girl being a compliment, this is one of those instances that I think this really applies to, is that sometimes women and girls are afraid to speak up because they don't want these perceptions associated with them, you know, whether that, like on the next one, they don't want to step into leadership because they don't want to be thought of as bossy. And so there's this relationship that's established between females specifically who are in leadership roles, that they are often perceived as being bossy, which is then perceived as being a negative quality, that negative trait, which then in turn leads to a decline in our confidence and our skills and our ability to think about leadership and female leadership in a positive mindset. Rox also shared some other pieces that I wanted to, that are really essential into this thinking and this notion and encouraging leadership in others. That 76% of girls think that they're in competition with each other. How I think that pertains to a work life is that, and in conversation with some other females as well, that there seems to be the perception that there's this very limited, realistically or just perceived, set of leadership jobs available to women. So there's this, let's say if we say there's this whole group of leadership jobs available, only this portion are targeted or specifically viewed as accessible to female leaders. So when that circle shrinks on availability, that institution of competition really pipes in, is that we become a little bit more fierce. We think that we're competing against each other. Sometimes that competition can turn into not friendly competition, but very unfriendly competition with each other. And so we have to be able to shift that mindset that just not this pool of jobs or leadership opportunities are available to us, but we need to make sure that this is available. And that's the perception among our girls and women. I wanted to throw in this also next statistic about effective friendships, because that really keys into the mentoring piece and being able to mentor women, that it's critical for girls. Girls who get along well with others, they just report overall greater levels of satisfaction with their life. They report lower levels of sadness and depression. And this really just elevates that need for mentoring as adults later in life, that it goes beyond friendships, but also looking at those critical mentor relationship as well. And then I want to jump to that last one, is that what do girls need to be successful? Well, the number one response is confidence. And so when we think about that, and we think about that in moving forward in leadership roles for women, I would anticipate that if we were to survey women, that their lack of maybe applying for a job or thinking about a leadership role or maybe moving to that next piece is that lack of confidence. So what we see happening with our girls is very much reflected in who we are as adults as well. And so here's the one that just really sticks with me on this ROCS research. 1 in 3 girls with a grade point average of more than a 4.0 don't think they're smart enough for their dream career. That makes me very sad. That a third of our girls who are obviously very bright and gifted academically don't think that they have the skills that they need to do whatever it is that they want to do. And that just correlates back to that lack of confidence. And so when we are young girls and we're 18 years old and we're graduating from college and or high school and we're graduating with that 4.0 plus, and we don't think that we have the skills necessary to do whatever it is that we want to do, then the likelihood of these girls, those 1 in 3 girls, choosing that path is going to be very minimal. And so we're really already setting that path for our girls of not thinking about leadership, not thinking about high-level jobs, not thinking about whatever career aspiration it is that they want. So for the group that's watching and the group that will then watch, one thing I just want you to think about as we reflect on what I've shared with you and then moving forward is what other new questions and considerations does this make you think about when we think about really mentoring women, specifically being intentional in those practices, and how does this information play into that?
So this is really interesting to see, to actually see it in data and with numbers. And I have a toddler daughter, so like on a personal level, this makes me wonder, about her development. And so when we look at that age trajectory of confidence, I mean, I'm sure we could take some guesses as to why that's happening, but has ROCS done research into the cause of that dip in confidence?
I can't speak for that to know concretely whether they have or not. I believe I've had some conversations with Lisa Hinkleman that they have looked into that, what does cause that, but I don't have that information quickly accessible. Lisa does this whole, training and opportunities on how to really build that confidence in girls. But, there's lots of things, maybe it's hormones, maybe it's circumstances, maybe it's environment. But definitely there is that notable decline when girls are starting to really make decisions about their life.
And that was kind of my next question was, what do we do about it to not have those numbers look like that? Again, as a mother, I'm like, well, what do I need to start doing when she's a little older?
And that is a great question and something for us to think about. And my personal opinion of that is that we have to be more intentional early on and have those honest conversations with our girls, but also women, young adults, that what you're feeling, maybe as an adult right now is not something that's necessarily new because of your circumstance. Maybe this is something that has been developing for a long time or been enabled in you or codified in you for a while. And that's not I don't want that to be perceived as a reason for not doing something, but it may be that contributing factor to reluctance. And I think we just have to be a lot more open about it, that this is a real concern that not only impacts Lisa Hinkleman also has great information about this confidence piece and how that results in very negative behaviors from girls, in teenage years. And so she also has that connection, engaging in risky behaviors, engaging in sexualized behaviors, and, being subjected to not great situations. And so there's also that horrible other side to it that's more than just leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just also now kind of move into that. We talked about, girls and what all of this historical information and all of this upbringing information, how that really solidifies our thinking and perceptions moving forward. But then also look at it from now we're in our career stage and perception's reality. The quote that perception's reality, and when we shift our perception, our experiences change. So why aren't more women in top business positions? So on this slide, it shares what are some of those perceptions, and it breaks it down by female and male perception. And again, it may be perception, but that's that person's reality. This is this group's reality. And being mindful of, are we holding women to higher standards? Are businesses not ready for women in top positions? Does family responsibilities perceive to be getting in the way in running a corporation? While these are business related, I think they can also be very easily transferred to education and education related. You may have had experiences. I know that women are held to different, I have been held to a different standard and had to have had that conversation, that difficult conversation with a board member, about that. Sometimes, I'm the first female superintendent at Boonville. Were they ready? Maybe, maybe not. Are they really ready to hire women in those top positions? And what does that look like? And then this really just goes back, it connects to what we were talking about with girls. So girls in high school who have greater than a 4.0, 1 in 3 don't think that they can attain their dream career. As adults, fewer women than men expect to achieve those top executive positions. So it really just continues. So again, it's not just an isolated mindset from our young girls because they're young and maybe they haven't had experiences, but it often, not always, is a mindset that very much stays with women throughout their careers. And I think really impacts our career thinking and our career trajectories.
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think culturally it has an effect too. Like I think probably here in central Missouri, in Boonville or Green Ridge or places like this, some people aren't as open-minded about the skills of women as maybe they are in an urban area like, Kansas City or St. Louis or different things like that. And so honestly, there's been a few jobs that I didn't apply for simply because I knew the views of the board that was hiring that I probably wasn't going to be given a fair look because I was a female versus a male.
I would agree with that, Rachel. I think that depending on the community and maybe your demographic makeup of your community or what they have historically really perceived as success and how that guides who they tap for leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think that very much plays into what we decide to do and whether we feel we're a good fit for that and whether that organization thinks we're a good fit.
Right. And it's not that I lack confidence in my abilities. It's just do I do the work? Do I put in the energy and effort to apply knowing? So this goes back to that. Do I expect to achieve it? I don't expect to achieve it there because of other reasons, not because I lack confidence in myself and my abilities. So I don't know if that plays into this data or not.
Yeah, that is a good point. And maybe that does. Maybe it's confidence in others' expectations.
Yeah.
Be a factor, very much so. So then now really connecting this. So why I wanted to, one piece I want to share is that I want to make clear that this isn't about men aren't capable. It's not a men hating or a male bashing conversation. It's really a conversation that women are underrepresented in leadership roles and specifically in education. When we look at 76% of the teachers in the United States are females, but only 26% of superintendents are women, there's really a breakdown. So you can't tell me, the connection is not there, that we only have a very small percentage of teachers who have the skill set and are qualified in the leadership drive to be a superintendent. I don't think that's accurate. I think we absolutely have a wide range and a high percentage of teachers who have the skill set, the knowledge, and the leadership skills to be leaders in our school districts. And so where is that breakdown occurring? Interestingly enough, only 9% of assistant superintendents are women. I thought that was a new statistic for me. I thought it would actually be higher than superintendents. And it was interesting to me that it was actually much less. And then, of course, there's the disparity when we look at secondary school principalship versus elementary. There are a lot more elementary female leaders, principals, than there are secondary. There tends to be this very much a cultural or what we're used to in the school district of female leaders can be elementary principals, but they probably can't be a secondary principal because they haven't been a coach or they haven't been a, whatever to really make that transition. So one of my pieces is that we have to be very strategic and intentional with mentoring. So going back to, we just can't hope, think, and feel that women are going to get there. We have to absolutely do a lot more. So what I've observed, and these are just my personal observations, is that women are really stalling in their leadership journeys. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, because certainly if you want to be an assistant superintendent or you want to be a principal, and that's what you want to do and you're passionate about it and you have no desire to do anything else, then that's not stalling. That's being successful in whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Where I'm referencing is that women who strive to do maybe something else, maybe take another step, maybe to try something new, they're stalling out very much at a principal or a mid-level central office job. They're not making the leap for some reason. They're not taking that risk. And it could be, as Rachel said, maybe that organization isn't ready for that risk. And so that person, that applicant senses that. But we really have to, I think about, why are we stalling? We have to be intentional with our tapping of our future leaders to build confidence. So it means not just, I think or I know that this person that I see as a leader is going to go ahead. I have to specifically reach out to that person and tap them and say, I think you would make a great leader because of why. And being very overt with that and being very strategic with that. Accessibility. So what opportunities am I sharing with other women? Am I creating accessible opportunities for them? Am I creating pathways for them? As a superintendent, am I creating avenues and opportunities for other women in this organization specifically to have a leadership opportunity? And then a responsibility as to what barriers can I clear from someone's path. So someone has cleared barriers for each of us along the way, whether we know that or not. Someone has gone before us and paved some way, part of the road. And so it's imperative now that we continue to clear that road, to move barriers when possible. And sometimes I think that's hard because you don't always see that reflected. You don't see the benefits of clearing those barriers for that person because you may not be here when that happens. And it may not be something that you necessarily see or note until after you leave, if you do decide to leave an organization. But it has to be that intentional work to move those barriers out of the way. And it's really more than work-life balance. I had a conversation with someone just the other day, and I don't want this to sound dismissive, but I'm kind of tired of the conversation that continually centers on work-life balance just for women. I'm not sure why this is where we're kind of putting all of our cards and centering on. I think there's more to it. And I think it's a part of the conversation, but it can't be all of the conversation. And it can't be all of the conversation as to why it can't be the only barrier as to why women aren't moving forward. It's more than work-life balance. There's a lot of other things. And then going back to that building confidence, how can we intentionally and strategically build confidence in women in leadership and working on those skills? And does that start very early on in high school? Do we need to look at putting programs or curriculum in place that really works on identifying and building girls' confidence in middle school and high school? Maybe waiting until we get to, and I say at middle age because I'm there, middle age, to work on those confidence skills is too late. I don't know. And then recognizing perceptions about women in leadership role. And I think preparing them to maneuver it. We can't be secretive about it. We have to have very honest conversations about the barriers and the accessibility issues that you're going to face. Maybe not always, but you likely are going to face them. And to be able to have conversations with women about how to maneuver that rather than staying away from it. And that's an area that I've really struggled with because I want to encourage women to join the superintendency, but it's hard. And it's really hard as a female. And it's kind of hard to have those conversations without being discouraging to that next group coming up. And so being able to balance that sense of not being discouraging, but being realistic with them, and then building that confidence that they absolutely can do it. And so just some questions to think about when mentoring and thinking about strategic mentoring of females. So how can we expand women's links to each other? And that connects back to that friendship. And I know that mentoring it's not just friendship, and it's more than friendship. It's all of these other pieces on the right on that slide. But making that connection is critical. It's critical for women to have a network. Because often, especially, if you're in a smaller community, you may be the only person in that role, and that's a very lonely job. And you have to have that person who can be your sounding board, and you have to have, I think it's critical to have that other female that you can talk about the barriers and difficulties and challenges that you might be facing. Are we actively communicating with other women at the workplace to make them feel included? Or are we going back to this competition sense? We've all heard the Mean Girls conversation. Is that happening? Are we facilitating Mean Girl conversations and unhealthy competition? Or are we facilitating active dialogue that's productive and encouraging of each other? And how can we share the benefits of having women in leadership roles? Again, it has to be framed in, it's not a women against men. It's about an underrepresentation of women. We are truly underrepresented in a leadership role, and specifically in education, that's a female-dominated profession. Why are we not having a bigger role in that? Why are we not having more influence in that decision making? How can we be powerful without alienating people? And so goes back to those negative connotations and perceptions about females and being bossy. And how do we exude confidence? How do we exude clarity and decision making and leadership skills without pushing people to the side? And sometimes as a woman, honestly, that is a different skill set than maybe a man is able to use. And that's not right or wrong. It's just different. And recognizing that sometimes things are just different, and that's okay. And so it requires a different approach. And then my last piece is just a challenge. So I love Sheryl Sandberg's quote about that if more women are in leadership roles, we're going to stop assuming that they shouldn't be. We'll be able to stop these conversations. So, I challenge each of you to really think about what is an accelerated leadership opportunity you can extend to a female coworker. And it may seem small to you or insignificant, but it may be just what that person's needing to hone their leadership skills or to practice or to just have an opportunity to present him or herself as a leader. Really investing in that professional development that's centered on building those confidence skill sets. And again, thinking, does that need to start much earlier rather than in our careers? Identifying that coworker who has leadership capabilities. So that goes to that intentional and strategic conversations that I shared earlier of you identify someone and another female that has great potential and you see great potential in being a leader in whatever capacity, but making sure that you are actually naming it and then communicating that to that person. We can't make the assumption that that person knows that. We have to strategically and intentionally identify that for that person. Empower problem solving. Again, things are going to that conversation that not good or bad, or one's better than the other, but women have different barriers and accessibility issues than men do when we move into leadership. And so how do we think about that in an empowerment sense of problem solving? How can we problem solve through that? And how can we empower others to help us problem solve through that? And then the last one is just develop that female talent. We are as I shared, we're in a sector that is female dominant and driven professionally. When we have 76% of our teachers that are female, there's a lot of talent there. Statistically, there's a lot of talent there. And we need to make sure that we are using a lens that it looks at talent from a lot of different lenses. And that we are encouraging and developing females to share their talents in every way possible in education. Because the more opportunities we as female leaders show and embrace and recognize the talents of each other, that's going to benefit our girls. And that really is going to help our girls in the long run. And maybe that percentage in that conversation of 1 in 3 girls don't think that they can have their dream career will start to shift. And that more and more girls, when they see us in these roles that are powerful and important and, setting the tone and driving decision-making, they'll see that they can have their careers too. So I hope that you guys were able to take just some pieces from what I shared. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I don't have a question. I just have a comment that this was very insightful, and so many things that you were saying were resonating with me. And you've inspired me to do some things on the network, I think, that are female related. And then also, again, as a mother, I want to try to break that stereotype with my own daughter. And this has just been, I've got a lot of notes here, like things that I can take away from this. Is there, you mentioned this mentoring, is there a formal female mentoring program in Missouri for women in leadership?
There is a Women in Leadership through Missouri Association of School Administrators. There's a female leadership kind of sector that has a conference every year. But there's not necessarily a strand in which they specifically pair up females with females. American Association of School Administrators, AASA, does have a Women in Leadership cohort that you can participate and join. I did that a few years ago, and it was very powerful. And I encourage anyone, you don't have to be a superintendent or want to be a superintendent. It's just about female leadership. And it was a very helpful and dynamic session, a great way to meet other women throughout the country too, who are really thinking about this.
Valerie, did you go to the Women in Leadership? I remember seeing Shauna there.
I did.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I saw Dr. Marriott. So yeah, I'm so glad I went, and we will definitely go again next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I'm part of the executive committee for MAESP, so the elementary group, and Jay Anderson is coming on as our new executive director. And at the last meeting, yeah, he talked about like maybe this is a path that we want to spend more time or PD on as well. And so I was like, I would love to help with that, because I totally agree. And I am a mom of girls, but my oldest has a daughter, and she calls her bossy all the time. And I was like, no, she has leadership skills.
That's right.
I go back to Valerie's comment about, having a young girl too. So I have a son. And what I've also hoped for him is that he, as a female, I'm hoping that I'm modeling for him what women can do, so that if and when he decides to get married or have a significant other, that he sees that's normal, that this is not atypical for, the desire to want to achieve a higher degree or a leadership job, and that it's not necessarily, that's just possible. So I want that to be normal thinking for him. Like, this is typical thinking. And so, that is what I've always hoped for, having a son too, is that this is the norm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very true. I also have a 6-year-old son, so I also should be thinking about the flip side of that, and giving him a healthy perspective of what women can achieve as well.
Yeah.
And so often when you were talking about, the correlation of like young women and women in their 40s is about when we peak with our confidence. And I wonder how much of this is just a cycle of us modeling that behavior to young women. And so how do we change it? So yeah, this has been really thought-provoking, and I'm so glad we did this today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and sharing. And as I said, some of it's just my thoughts and my opinions, right or wrong, but I hope again that you were able to take something away from it and maybe just think more about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, and you have a great rest of your day.
I will. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.